Mirage is one of the best Warframes to have in your arsenal in 2025. She is an absolute damage powerhouse, whether that's buffing weapons, buffing your teammates, giving your companions more damage, whether that's nuking low-level missions or Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Mirage has so many synergies that I feel like I have barely scraped the surface, even though this video is so long, covering so much. In this video, I will highlight the most important things to know about her so you can have the tools to test out so much more with her yourself and actually enjoy how versatile this Warframe is. Let's not waste any time. Mirage's passive just allows you to slide 85% longer and you have 50% faster maneuver speed, which is basically just wall running, acrobatics, rolling, and so on. Her first ability is called Hall of Mirrors. Create 4 clones or holograms, whichever one you want to call it. I personally just call it clones. They will essentially follow your every step and mimic your actions. Each clone is vulnerable to damage and will deal a percentage of your current weapon's total damage. We'll go over that now, but when I say each clone is vulnerable to damage, they actually are invulnerable. But what this technically means is that each clone actually in a way gives you dodge chance as Mirage, and it's a great way to stay alive because the enemies will aim at your clones instead of you and basically just shoot right past you. Only 2 clones will shoot if you're using your primary and secondary at a time, basically giving you 3 instances of damage, including yourself, obviously. Because there is only 2 shooting, this actually makes your clones do 40% of the current primaries and secondaries total damage. However, all of your clones will melee with you if you use your melee weapon, and they will deal 20% of your melee damage. But this percentage is scaled with ability strength and will also increase the crit and status chance of your clones. The stats of your clones are inherited from the modded stats of your weapon you are currently using. Remember, they mimic everything that you do. This ability has so many synergies and it is incredibly useful for maximizing your damage output, distracting enemies, and using it for when you are reviving downed teammates. It is very powerful. If you are using glaives with Hall of Mirrors, only you as Mirage will explode the glaive and not your clones, but they will also just throw out a glaive. And a bug is that your clones can actually proc melee influence, although I'm yet to 100% confirm this after my initial little bit of testing. Hall of Malevolence is the augment for Hall of Mirrors. This scales the damage of your clones by 5% every time you kill an enemy, stacking up to 10 times at max. They will deal 50% damage at max, and no, this is not affected by ability strength, but the damage boost is multiplicative. This 50% bonus will reset when the ability expires. The augment is very good if you scale your ability strength to ridiculous heights, because it technically means that the clones' base damage scaling from the base ability will scale higher, meaning that the 50% will scale even more. But if the clones are not the focus of your kit, then there is no need to use this augment, although it can be very powerful if you're using a Total Eclipse and Hall of Malevolence setup. We'll go over Total Eclipse now in a second. Sleight of Hand is the second ability for Mirage. You will booby trap all nearby objects and pickups. You will cast a jewel at your reticle and it will last about 20 seconds at base with a 40-meter radius. So this is more than enough base range. But the jewels will glisten and draw enemies in. When they come close and the jewel is in light, it will deal blast damage and explode, but if it's in dark or in the shadows, it will blind enemies for 5 seconds. The jewels do not proc status effects, that's very important, but the booby traps will inhibit many things like consoles and containers and so on and so on. I'm not going to go over the whole list, but it is a lot. Basically, it will just booby trap most things that are interactable or destroyable in the world. That's pretty much all you need to know. If you have Hall of Mirrors active, your clones will create more smaller jewels around the bigger jewel when you cast Sleight of Hand. So it's important to have Hall of Mirrors active when you cast Sleight of Hand. This will just simply multiply the amount of jewels and it will allow you to crowd control enemies easier and distract them. It's very, very powerful. I will be honest, her second ability's main function or use is for Sanctuary Onslaught and Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. It is perfect for that, for nuking enemies, which we'll go over later on in the video and how that whole thing works. Also, it is very good for excavation or anything to keep enemies at bay and just distract them from a specific target. It's just more crowd control. Explosive Ledger Domain is the augment for Sleight of Hand. This ties into the ESO Nuking, making Mirage amazing for it. Ammo and orb pickups are turned into proximity mines that deal 1000 damage at base with 100% status chance. This is affected by ability strength. The explosion rate radius is also affected by ability range, so you want to scale both of these very high when using this augment. They will have a 60-second duration, and it is not affected by ability duration. Ammo pickups deal cold damage, affinity orbs do toxin damage, energy orbs do electricity, and health orbs deal heat damage. However, there is a caveat with this augment. All the effective pickups that turn into mines will be destroyed, but it will only affect you as Mirage, and your teammates will be unaffected. They will be none the wiser. This is very powerful for the Archon mod set and just makes it perfect to use with Mirage. And like I said, Sanctuary Onslaught is pretty much the main use for this, but we'll go over that later. Eclipse is Mirage's third, one of the most popular Warframe abilities and Helminth subsumes. Let's be real, we all know what Eclipse is and what it does, but for those who don't know, there are two versions, a hold and tap function. Tap gives you Lunar Eclipse, which gives you 90% damage reduction with ability strength. Hold gives you Solar Eclipse, which grants a multiplicative weapon damage bonus that is calculated after a weapon's total damage. Can be recasted to switch out and change on the fly and reset the duration. This is an extremely powerful damage bonus, and many people already know that. I don't need to sell you on that. This bonus will also actually apply twice on Glaive Explosions and on Exodia Contagion from Zors, which allows you to do millions upon millions of damage with these two things. It is crazy. It also applies to a bunch of abilities as well. Here is the screenshot. At base, you get 75% damage reduction and 200% increased weapon damage, but the weapon damage bonus scales incredibly well with strength. I'm talking like above 600% with ease if you wanted to. The augment is Total Eclipse. Now this one is a little special. While Eclipse is active, you will give the bonus to nearby allies within 15 meters, scaling with range of course. But here is the special thing. This applies to your clones from your first ability as well, increasing their damage. It affects your companions, it affects teammates and specters. This effectively means with this augment, Mirage is a fantastic team buffer and providing a ridiculous amount of damage to all nearby allies and companions. And it makes your companions completely nuke everything, which is something I will touch on in this video. It is insane. Like I said, Mirage has ridiculous amounts of synergies. It is endless. I can't cover it all in one video. It's too much. Mirage's fourth is Prism, which is such a fun ability. It really is one of my favorite, especially with the augment, but I barely use it, sadly. Generate a prism in your hand that launches forward, shooting out little lasers that will basically track enemies. There will be 20 lasers at once, and they will track enemies within 30 meters. These lasers will deal radiation damage, and each damage tick will increase the damage by 25% permanently, just constantly stacking up. So the longer the prism is active, the more it hits enemies, the more the damage begins to scale more and more and more. So that's how you kind of get this damage to scale like crazy on Prism. The Prism will last 12 seconds at base. Now this sounds great and all, and to be honest with you, it is, but if I'm being honest, it's very good for lower level content, and you really need casting speed in my honest opinion. I just don't like this ability without casting speed. It is a very slow casting time without casting speed. The lasers will also need line of sight, which is not a problem, and the prism will drain 10 energy per second while it is active. You can also manually deactivate it and it will explode, blinding enemies within 25 meters. Now, this ability can be scaled into Steel Path if you wanted to, but it is going to be a lot harder and you're going to have to invest a lot. Raw will apply a separate and unique damage bonus that is multiplicative to Prism's laser damage. So if you do want to go into Steel Path, Raw is a very good option here. Solar Eclipse will increase its damage by 100% as well. And also the clones from Hall of Mirrors will not create their own prisms. Prism Guard is the augment for this ability, and man, it makes it really fun. It allows Prism to follow you above your head while you move, but the duration is set to 4 seconds, which cuts its base duration. With this augment, you have to scale ability duration. It's very important because it just cuts it to ridiculously low duration. It's up to you to use it. I find it really cool and fun, but it is not needed, especially if you're going to be stacking casting speed to launch Prism in a big enough room without the augment. But again, it's just something for you to decide if you want to use it. One thing I can say is it is a fantastic mod and synergy to use in Star Chart Exterminate or Relic runs, as you literally walk and everything dies as Prism follows you, like in the footage you see in the background. Basically, it has its uses, but you can decide when to use it. And that pretty much covers the abilities. And as always, if I can ask you could just hit that like button. It really helps to spread the video. Thank you so much. Let's talk about how to play Mirage. It's fairly simple. As a no Helminth playstyle, your first ability needs to be up at all times. This is for increased damage and survivability since they distract enemies. It is very, very powerful. Do not underestimate how strong her first ability is. Cast your second when you want to crowd control enemies and distract them, although I don't really spam it that much, but if you do feel like you need it, then just press 2 quickly. Eclipse should be up at all times, whether it's the lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, it doesn't matter. The only 2 abilities you technically spam as Mirage is technically your second and fourth ability. Your 1 and 3 is really just a cast and forget. Prism is used for when you want to just deal outright damage, especially in Star Chart. In higher levels like Steel Path, you will struggle a tad when it comes to Prism's damage scaling. But in Star Chart, this thing is absolutely disgusting and is incredibly useful in all scenarios. You can push this damage up in Steel Path if you wanted to. However, my suggestions with Prism is to cast it in corridors or open rooms with good line of sight. Now let's move on to how we build Mirage as a beginner. Mirage doesn't need as much range unless you are specifically nuking with your second and fourth ability. But even then, it's got decent base range. Modding for duration and strength, in my opinion, in the Star Chart is much better. Energy sustain is always a problem in the Star Chart, but you can fix that with Equilibrium, Streamline, and/or Energy Nexus. But remember, the energy drain from Prism will actually cancel out Energy Nexus while it is casted, although Energy Nexus is still a good option for those who want to just regain energy outside of casting Prism. So please keep that in mind for the new players. In the very beginning, a simple half build like this will suffice. Moving to later Star Chart, this is what a full budget build would look like in the Star Chart. You can switch it out for any stat that you want or an augment that you manage to obtain, although you can drop Blind Rage and go for range instead with Stretch, for example. Again, you don't actually need a full build for Mirage in the Star Chart. She will shred through everything. But this is an option or a nice framework to look for. This leads me on to Mirage and her survivability issues. Many people consider her to be squishy, which I agree to an extent, depending on your setup. But Mirage can actually be very tanky if you opt for the lunar eclipse side of things. Although, let's be real, we all want that huge damage increase, don't we? Why on earth would we want 90% damage reduction? Now you can opt for the usual shield gating route if you wanted to, brief respite, adaptation, fast deflection, and arcane aegis. You could also opt for certain Helminth options, the most amazing one being Omamori, which I will go over later on in the video why it's so strong and powerful with Mirage. Evade is also a fantastic option for being invisible, and you get to utilize Arcane Crepuscular. Shooting Gallery with Muzzle Flash is also a good option, or any other helmet that you see fit to stay alive, like Condemn. A lot of people like going Pillage and so on. It's up to you. Also, Mirage's first ability inherently distracts enemies, effectively giving you dodge chance in quotation marks. It's not actually dodge chance, but it's kind of like that. We're just going to call it that for the sake of this video. And her second ability will blind enemies if it's in the shadows. That's another thing. Now let's talk about no Helminth Mirage moving into Steel Path. There are quite a few ways to build and play Mirage. The first being an all-rounder setup focusing on decent strength with decent duration. Like I mentioned earlier on, Mirage only spams her fourth and second ability, so running negative efficiency isn't that bad if you're not spamming her fourth consistently. Now, for those of you who watch my videos frequently, you know I hate running negative efficiency on any Warframe, no matter how good their energy sustain is. But Mirage is the first frame in a while where it actually does not feel bad. That's surprising coming from me. However, if you feel like you are struggling, by all means, switch out the build to make it feel more comfortable. This is just a framework. You don't need to follow it exactly. When it comes to augments, it purely depends on what you want. You want to buff your teammates, companions, use Total Eclipse. Want to buff your clones, use Hall of Malevolence. You can combine Total Eclipse and Hall of Malevolence to get further increased damage to focus on your clones if you wanted to. You want to nuke with your fourth ability in the Star Chart and Relic runs, use Prism Guard. It really is up to you and how you want to build Mirage. Our all-rounder build looks like this with Total Eclipse. This can be switched out for a dual augment setup with Hall of Malevolence to scale your clone's damage even more, especially with Total Eclipse to reach ridiculous amounts of damage numbers. This setup right here can pretty much be used as a companion buffer, a team buffer, and overall gun running build as well. So it's pretty much 3 playstyles in one. So that pretty much covers most of the playstyles. Then we have a Prism Guard setup used for Star Chart. You can use other mods if you don't have these, but if you are in Steel Path and you're going back to the Star Chart to do relic runs and so on, or help out a friend, you can add Molt Augmented in, or If you are on the star chart and you actually have a bit of platinum lying around, you can buy Arcane Consequence to gain 60% particle velocity, making this build a lot faster. And this is so much fun to play when speeding through exterminate missions or even relic missions. I highly recommend you give it a go. It is so much fun, but this is not a steel pass setup. I want to make that very clear. You can make it a steel pass setup with raw and a means of armor stripping and strength scaling and so on, but this setup that I've shown is not made for steel pass. Archon shards. I would say at least one casting speed shard with Mirage. Duration shards are also very nice, or simply any other shard to fill out something that you need. She's quite flexible, but at the same time, she does need strength or duration, so it's up to you. And of course, it depends on the helmet you have as well. This leads me on to a very important playstyle with Mirage, and that is the ESO Nuking setup. Mirage is one of the best frames to focus farm and nuke in Sanctuary Onslaught or Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. ESO is incredibly useful for farming XP for other players and yourself, and like I said, daily focus limit as well. Slapping a lens onto Mirage, it's perfect. And this is because of Sleight of Hand and its augment explosive ledger domain. As I explained in the augment section, this turns pickups into mines, each with a different effect. Scaling strength and range with this in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught is perfect since you stack up a metric ton of traps that simply overlap, allowing you to spawn kill enemies as they arrive. It is crazy. There are many ways you can go about building the setup, so there isn't one set way. Please keep this in mind. Also, it depends on what you have available and how budget you want to go. Archon mods work extremely well since it applies all the base elements. You can go the 4 Archon mods. This is what I opted for, to be honest with you. And let's talk about the beginners now, since this is something that a lot of beginners or star chart players will need. A no helmet beginner setup would look like this. Simple mods, scaling strength and range as much as you can. And as you start building mods, you can start adding to the latest setup. To explain how this works, you hop into Elite Sanctuary Onslaught or normal Sanctuary Onslaught with other players. Simply wait for a few enemies to die so they start dropping ammo pickups, health orbs and so on. Spam your second ability, but remember to cast Hall of Mirrors so that you can cast more traps at a time. Rinse and repeat. Run around, get energy pickups if needed before you cast Sleight of Hand, because the augment will remove them for you. Remember that. Now we move into the latest setup, which is heavily inspired by Unified Codex. Go and check out his video. I've tested many different variations, and honestly, this one is definitely by far the best. Raw over your 3, so it amplifies the ability damage of your 2nd. You can go overextended, or you can go Energy Nexus if you want more energy sustain, or simply another mod. It doesn't matter. I opted for Energize to help with energy sustain, but if you go and check out Unified Codex's video, he uses Arcane Steadfast, which is something that's very good, although I don't have one maxed. You can go a more comfortable setup and go slightly lower strength and replacing Blind Rage with Transient Fortitude, then subsuming Dispensary onto your 4th for infinite energy sustain if you wanted to. This is an option. But for more damage and nuking, go the raw build because that is insanely strong, and yeah. And remember, go and check out Unified Codex and check out his channel. He makes amazing content. And that pretty much covers the ESO nuking. Then we have companion buffing. Mirage with Total Eclipse is absolutely broken when it comes to using companions and buffing them. The Mecha set, Contagious Bond, all of those are insane if you want to go that route. I ran out of configs to show all of the builds, but any of the builds that I showcase with Total Eclipse can be used for companion. The Pharaoh Predicide is really good with Contagious Bond and also its Toxin mod, giving you free Toxin. Nautilus with Verglass and Blast is very fun. You can also use armor stripping for more effectiveness. There are so many options here. This video is going to go on forever if I had to show them all, but truly any companion would work insanely well since you're giving your companion over 500% plus damage with a bit of strength. Desiccation's Curse Subsume also works really well, which I mentioned in my companion meta guide. Definitely give that a go. You can honestly test and have fun. Just wanted to mention this so that you know it, and it's a very overlooked synergy with Mirage, and also people overlook how powerful it is. Okay, now we can finally talk about Helminth Builds. Damn, there's so many things with Mirage. First on the list is melee. Because Mirage has Eclipse giving you a huge damage boost, Wrathful Advance is perfect to subsume over her 2 or 4th, depending on what you want, You can utilize purple shards to boost your melee damage to ridiculous heights when you start critting. Remember, Hall of Mirrors clones will all deal melee damage, except they will deal less damage since it's divided by 4, but because you scale your strength ridiculously high with the setup, they will essentially do more damage, and Eclipse gets higher and Wrathful Advance gets higher, so it is crazy. The bonus about the setup is you're barely spamming abilities, so low efficiency is more than enough. You don't feel it, to be honest. And you can pair this with melee influence or melee afflictions or simply any melee and you will shred. There is no other way to sugarcoat this. Mirage is ridiculously good with melees. Next up is an armor stripping build. Mirage does heavily benefit from enemies being armor stripped, whether you choose 2 green shards for max corrosive or use an ability to do so. I opted for a Phantomize because I just simply like it. It slows enemies down, applies heat, and because Mirage needs so much strength for Eclipse, you can strip like over 30% per second, so it just melts their armor. Many people opt for Pillage or opt for Terrify and so on. I just personally prefer a Phantomize. Again, this is just a framework, but this is the build right here for the Phantomize. I absolutely love this setup when using the Cedo Prime and spamming the Alt Fire. It's disgusting how strong it is. Here is the Cedo build. As you can see in the background, it is crazy. And you can use the Coda Base Assist. It is so powerful with the Eclipse buff that it literally melts everything with the Alt Fire, which is crazy. The fact that the Alt Fire melts everything. Finally, let's move on to the star of this video showcase, and that is the Omamori build. A huge shout out to Emmy for this comment here, telling me to check out Omamori. Omamori has a chance to heal you instead of enemies dealing damage to you. So you essentially just ignore the hit and get healed if it procs. But Hall of Mirrors technically distracts enemies, making it harder for you to get hit, which, like I said, is kind of like dodge chance. So in the odd chance that you manage to get hit, Omamori will proc instead, meaning you pretty much ignore damage for the most part. Now you can go one of 2 ways with this. You can go Arcane Aegis and Adaptation, so you just don't die, or you could just go Fast Deflection and regenerate your shields a lot quicker. That's it. Then you can mod for other things if you wanted to. This is a very fun setup, and it's just a lazy way to survive in Warframe and pretty much sort out Mirage's survivability issues entirely. It is insane how this interacts with her first ability. It doesn't technically multiply the chance of Omamori proccing, but at the same time it does. It's because you barely get hit, essentially. It's a weird way in how it interacts, but it is very, very powerful. On the flip side, you can actually go Evade instead of subsuming Omamori, and here you just focus on more duration and opt for Arcane Crepuscular to deal even more damage since you're invisible and you get more strength. Both methods are extremely good for survivability and will make you very hard to die. Okay, we're almost done. Weapons that are good with Mirage. This video has gone on for so long, I'm going to just rapid fire the special cases from my testing. Cedo Alt Fire paired with armor stripping like a Phantomize is insane. When you start stacking up the weapon stacks, you shred through Steel Pass with the Alt Fire alone. Coda Base Assist with the Alt Fire, something like Heat or Toxin, literally melts when you start stacking up the stacks, and the Alt Fire ticks up in status effects, which is just broken. The Cyotid is amazing for grouping and scaling gas procs with Eclipse's damage bonus. Corofol is literally disgusting with her first ability since you shoot out multiple projectiles. Tenet Gregori's Slider Heavy Attack projectile can be mirrored from clones, and Glaives are disgusting with her even though that there are only one that detonates. Eclipse doubles up, and Exodia Contagion does the same thing. Millions and millions of damage with Eclipse. It's crazy. And then Epitaph's Tapfire is absolutely broken with Mirage. Like, look how much damage it's doing. This is the Tapfire. And finally, Mirage with the Icarius Prime and Arcane Pistolier is absolutely disgusting. It is crazy. Give it a go. You will not regret it. Final thoughts on Mirage. She's just an OP damage powerhouse that has way too many synergies and is just a must-have for any Warframe player. She's very useful in many cases, very versatile, satisfying to play, and overall just a fun frame to test anything with since she buffs everything with big amounts of damage. Once you sort out the survivability issues, then yeah, she's amazing. I highly recommend you get her just for ESO at least. Very good option for that. As always, a huge thank you to our channel members. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you for your support, and I will see you all in the next video.